Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Freelance Life. I'm Megan, the host, and well, you probably know me by now if you've watched some of our other episodes. I'm joined by Shea, the other half of Freelance Life. Say hi, Shea.
Hi.
We're joined, it's a special episode tonight because we are joined by Michelle, who is a freelance. Well, you're not just freelance. I'm actually gonna make you introduce yourself, Michelle. So why don't you tell us? You've got 60 seconds. Tell us all the good stuff.
Okay, great. So my whole screen just froze like up until that moment. So jumping straight in. I'm an advertising vet. I've been doing this for about 15 years. It feels like it's about 50 some days. Creative director, part-time superhero, I'd like to think. I'm a designer by trade, but I've been involved in all sorts of other things, and now recently jumping into the whole AI usage to see how it works with my career and with my day-to-day tasks.
Yeah. And we've brought you on board because Shay and I are both writers, and we wanted to have this discussion about AI a little bit more kind of multi-dimensional. I've played around with Midjourney a little bit, but I mean, most of my experience is on the writing side, which is quite different, even from a prompt perspective. But we'll get all into all of that. I think maybe let's kick off the discussion and chat about how AI has actually impacted creative roles in general. In other words, has it changed what you do and what clients expect of you since GenAI, or I think ChatGPT was the first GenAI to be released? Has it changed anything that you do?
Yeah, I think there's always been this expectation that we can sort of make magic out of nothing. And now we have tools that can almost make magic out of nothing. So I think what has happened is we are seeing a lot of shorter deadlines and greater expectations. And there is this general understanding that it's super easy to prompt AI and get what you need. So they're in general anticipating lower fees because it's so easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a mixed bag. I admit I was a bit of a late starter with the AI stuff because as it started sort of hitting the mainstream and people were talking about it, I was a little bit of a Luddite. And I was like, no, I don't like the idea of this taking over creative roles. But I've definitely warmed up to it. It helps. It helps in a lot of ways, but I do find that the expectations on creative have changed a little bit because of it.
Yeah. And you, Shay, I know we've discussed before about how like writing prompts. I mean, ChatGPT is the big one, but there's Gemini, which was the old Bard. There's like a dime a dozen content generation tools now for written stuff. How has it impacted what you do?
So I'd say definitely from a productivity perspective, it helps in that you can actually get more done in a shorter space of time. One huge use case that I've found is interviews. So, I mean, having an interview transcribed for you as you have it, it's there, it's written for you. You're not having to sit and listen to something and type it out and then make sense of it and write an article around it. So, I mean, that's just one small use case, but that's saves you hours of time. So from a productivity perspective, awesome. And I've actually found from a client expectation perspective, also awesome. I love how with a lot of my clients anyway, their expectations of what I produce has actually gotten higher because they're expecting what I produce to be better than what the bots can do. So it's kind of pushed me creatively to think, okay, how can I make sure that this doesn't look like AI? What am I bringing that's new to the table, something that's real proprietary information or that people can't actually get anywhere else? So I think from that perspective, it's actually been really positive in that I've been forced to maybe dig a little deeper than I would have, be a little bit less generic than I might have been in the past. So I'm all for that, producing the higher quality stuff.
Yeah. less generic. So you're not starting your conversations or your intro paragraphs with, in the dynamic business
ever-changing.
landscape.
Oh my gosh.
As we navigate,
Go
I've
on a
started
journey. In conclusion.
Yeah. I've actually seen an impact on the type of clients I'm using, and I don't know if this is something you guys have noticed as well. Small businesses feel that they can rely on AI. It's cheaper than using a writer to create content. Maybe because they're smaller businesses, or maybe because they don't know better. Generally business owners do their own marketing, but they're not necessarily marketers and content creators. They tend to just kind of copy paste the crap that comes out of these AI generative engines, and they get it for free. Whereas all my massive corporates are like, we want you to use AI tools, but there needs to be that if we catch you copy pasting, there's going to be big trouble, because there still needs that kind of human intervention. So that's one of the things that I've seen. I've seen a massive drop off in small clients, and the marketing agencies and corporate clients that I write for they're all into AI, but as a tool, not as just a generate and copy paste.
Yeah.
So,
and you can see, and I noticed a lot of that on social media. I know you're not on Facebook, but gosh, you can see all the small businesses that are using copy paste AI with thousands of emojis per post. And you wonder, at what point is everyone just going to skim past that content, knowing that no human has ever touched it? And then will they come running back to actual human created social media content?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I mean, a lot of the stuff is templated, and I think that's obviously how the AI has been trained. It's been trained on stuff that's been generated, and then it aggregates it and pushes it out as a template. So, like you say, even LinkedIn posts are like emoji heavy, and you can. It's always that like title case heading with the two emojis on either side, and then it like goes into a paragraph. How are we spotting the graphic side, Michelle? Like, is there, obviously the graphic side, it's like you look for like the extra fingers on the hands and like the weird eye, and is there, but it's getting better. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the preview for Sora, which is OpenAI's animation tool. It is mind-boggling what this thing can create, and in the last few months, how the development has jumped. So I mean, it's becoming better at the graphic side of things. So how are you finding it, Mish?
I think it comes down to it's a tool, right? So in the right hands, if it's used correctly, you can craft really beautiful stuff. And it's like you mentioned with some of your smaller clients, they just sort of generating stuff using AI because it's cheap or it's free or whatever. It's not necessarily good. So, you do spot a lot of things where, like you mentioned, there's always the dodgy hands. There's an element still in some of the photographic stuff. It's like a plasticity to the skin. It's trained off of all these perfect images of people who've been airbrushed to death. So you land up like losing something authentic, and it's very sort of uncanny valley-esque at times. That's where I'm seeing it the most. And also, I mean, it's on a social side of things, but you see all these, look at this cute real animal, can you believe this is real kind of post, and it's obviously something that's been generated because yeah. So it's getting harder and harder to spot, but I think it comes down to that same level of crafting. If you've got someone who has lots of experience, they can use the tool in a very successful way and still make it feel like it's something that's been handcrafted and has a human touch involved.
So how do you actually like apply AI in your job? Because as we were setting up this interview, we were chatting on WhatsApp, and you sent me a whole bunch of really hilarious images that you were trying to prompt. And like the one image looked like it came straight out of the sequel of Mars Attacks. And I'm sure that was not the intended or the intention of that image. So how are you actually leveraging? So maybe chat about like how you're actually using it in your processes, and then maybe we can go from there into your kind of prompt strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest challenge for most creatives is when it comes down to working on things like key visuals or storyboarding. You, for the most part, and especially with our ever shrinking timelines, to go and draw out a full storyboard in lots of detail can take a couple of days. So I'm using Midjourney quite a lot to generate scenes or different imagery, etc., for storyboarding or to brief photographers as sort of a supplementary tool. I think as well, from a key visual perspective, we struggle, especially in the South African market, to find stock imagery that's representative of our people. So you will always find like the African American family with the picket fence, but you won't find people who look like the people we interact with on a daily basis. So to try and find the right stock imagery to kind of land these proof of concept ideas is impossible sometimes. And that's where something like a Midjourney is very helpful, because you can put in prompts and get a little bit closer to the direction you want to go.
Yeah. And you, Shay, obviously you mentioned that you're using, the one use case was the transcription of interviews and that kind of thing. Are you using any other tools, or are you using generative AI in a way that actually you're creating content with it, or is it more kind of for ideation and that kind of thing?
So it's a great brainstorming buddy for me. I mean, working alone, you sometimes get stuck in your own head. So it's great to be able, for example, to say, give me 10 options for email subject lines. Most of the time, I'll never actually use one that's been, it won't be an exact replica, but it gets me thinking about, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Let me delve into that a bit further. So as a brainstorming partner, great. Summarizing text. So if I've got a huge thing to read that I know I actually don't need to read it line by line, every detail, I just need the gist, shove it into ChatGPT and please say summarize the key points. I'll use it to generate bullet lists, which is great. So again, taking a whole chunk of text, say, organize it into logical bullet points. And then from there, I can see, okay, that's actually what I want to talk about. And so, yeah, brainstorming buddy, just like an assistant to do the kind of mundane stuff that would have taken quite a long time, that I can now condense into a shorter time frame and actually use the new time I have available to me to get a bit more creative or spend time going a bit deeper. I know you use Perplexity for research. I still get nervous about stats and sources, so I always ask for that, but then I still go double check, because I that's something that I don't know what your experience has been like, Meeks, with that.
Yeah, Perplexity is amazing. And I think that I know that there's been a lot of investment in the model. It's connected to the internet. It's got that kind of ChatGPT plugin as well that generates text, and you can actually have a really good conversation with it, when you're doing research. But I've had cases that I've asked for specific statistics, because a lot of the stuff I write, you need very, very specific statistics, and there's parameters. It can't be older than a year old, or it has to be something, a trending news article that's been released in the last 3 months. And a lot of the time I have picked up with those very specific queries that either it makes something up and it references it. So it'll give you a link. It'll give you a link, and it'll give you a summary of like what you're looking for. You click on that link and you cannot find any reference to that stat in the article. Otherwise, it doesn't look at the date range. So it'll be like, give me stats for solar production or whatever in the last 3 months, and it'll give you something from like 2016. So these things are not infallible. They are definitely you have to double check. And it's the same. I mean, AI hallucinates all the time. It's essentially it makes shit up, because at the end of the day, all it's doing, like ChatGPT, it's remixing data that it's been trained on. So it's more of like a probability thing in terms of what word comes next in the sentence. Like Mary had a little, it'll tell you lamb. And then you say, well, replace lamb with another animal. You go through all the animals in the entire animal kingdom, and it's going to start making something up that sounds like it could be an animal, So you have to be so careful. And that's why it's, I suppose, for the average Joe, copy pasting. But if you are marketing and you've got stuff that is really factually critical to that piece, you have to be so careful and double check your sources and that kind of thing. I don't know. Do you have that with the Mid-Journey stuff? Or you mentioned that you were playing around on DALL-E as well, Michelle. Like, does the graphic side of AI hallucinate?
Most definitely. I had an incident in Mid-Journey where I was prompting an image of 3 Black women, sort of mid-20s, early 30s, relaxing by the pool, etc. And one image generated a topless woman in there. And suddenly every other iteration was topless. And it was just like, I could not get away from it. I was like, what did I do to get to this point? I wanted like swimming costumes or tank tops or whatever. And suddenly they're like all topless. And I'm like, where did this come from? I've seen as well, looking at like Mid-Journey to DALL-E, using the same prompts in Mid-Journey and putting them into DALL-E, I got the most terrifying mascot I've ever seen in my life with these big sharp teeth. And I was like, it's the same prompt, like, so somewhere along the line, it's gone off on its own mission and brought me back this. Yeah.
I think it all comes down to interpretation. And in many ways, that is one of the saving graces, I think, for us as content creators, is that the prompt is essentially a brief. And a lot of people that are relying on these generation tools cannot brief a content creator to save their life. Now they're trying to prompt or trying to brief a non-human, non-sentient piece of algorithm. And I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I mean, AI can't read between the lines. So yeah, I mean, swings and roundabouts, I suppose. But that's probably a good segue to your prompt strategy. Like, Shea, like, how do you prompt? I don't know if you've got a use case that you could share with us, in terms of the prompts that you use to get the optimal outcome. Because I've found I try to template my prompts, and because the AI is so unpredictable, it spits out different stuff every time. I can use that same prompt and it'll give me a completely different, and sometimes it hits the nail on the head, sometimes it's like, what the hell? So that's why I think like prompt guides and that kind of thing are bullshit, because like I don't think that you can really templatize a prompt. So what's your strategy? How do you approach prompting?
So I must be honest, I am no prompt master because it takes a lot of time and effort to actually get it right. And I find it's actually quicker for me to just write it myself instead of trying to create, spend half an hour creating a beautiful prompt that's going to get me the best outcome. I'm actually better off just sitting and writing it myself. So I definitely have a long way to go when it comes to prompt craft. And like you said, the templates, I've tried that. They don't work. I tried one of Neil Patel put out a couple a while ago for like blogs and all of that. And, the result that you get is just still meh. So, it does help. Obviously, the more, like any good brief, the more direction you can give, the better. So I'll always include, tone is obviously one of the most important aspects for us writers. So what I found quite helpful to do is because sometimes it's quite hard to read something and describe the tone in a way that you're going to get that exact result. So if I see a tone that I like, or there's a previous article that's been written by the company, I'll put that in and say, describe this tone. And then I'll use ChatGPT's description of that tone to say, okay, now write this in X and Y tone. Again, it's not foolproof, and sometimes it doesn't quite capture what I'm looking for. But that's why we're here, and that's why we're writers, and that's why we don't just copy paste. So I definitely have a lot of learning to do, and I'm not sure I'm quite ready to go through that that learning when actually I enjoy sitting down and writing. So that was my Ladat comment of the evening.
And you, Mish, because like I say at the beginning of this conversation, I played around a little bit with Discord, and I've got ChatGPT prompting down to, I wouldn't say a fine art, but I can kind of, I'll tell you guys how I kind of approach it. But using that same strategy did not work in Discord. Oh my God. Like I was getting really weird crap out of Discord. And it was like what I was describing in my mind's eye and the result that I was getting out of the prompts that I was putting in were like chalk and cheese. So yeah, how do you prompt image generation?
So one of the things I do is I generate my images in the sort of open forum. So while I'm waiting for my images to generate, I watch what other people are doing and I steal things from them. So when I see a particular style and I see how they've prompted it, I screenshot that and I store it like a hoarder. And I've got like a little folder of AI prompts that I keep on hand. So like if I need to generate something in that style of art, I'll try and go that route. When it comes to images, I mean, I literally, it's quite sad, but I have a whole lot of screenshots of stuff where I've actually gone and, recorded what I prompted because it worked. So maybe next time it'll work again. So I normally use certain keywords like photorealistic. I'll use things like Unreal Engine 5 or ultra detailed or 4K or whatever, depending on how detailed I want that image to be. I try and prompt it in terms of camera framing, so how much of the body I want to see. So some of these things can be really, really long. What I do find sometimes is, despite giving it this huge list of commands and this very, very granular detail, it still spits out like an image of someone from the waist up when you want like a full length. So if I get to the point where I've generated loads of images and I keep, refreshing and trying to see if it can pick up the prompts again and it's still doing the same thing, then I sometimes will go and reference an image and bring in an image and say, like this, but with this and this and this. I found that the amount of detail is very hit and miss. Sometimes you give it loads of detail and it understands you. Other times it's just not happening. What I found on DALL-E, because it's so conversational, is if you are trying to create something, so I was trying to create like a childish mascot, and it came back to me with all these like hints. It's like, if you're trying to create something childish, you should look at the head proportions and you should look at the eyes. And, it's like, it gives you all this assistance. And then you try and use it, and again, it's hit or miss. In this case, DALL-E works very nicely with anything that's got like a Pixar-esque vibe. So it seems to love the animated side of things, where I found Midjourney seems to love the photorealistic side of things. But yeah, I mean, literally as I go and as I generate things and as I see what other people are generating, I just pinch and try and sort of cobble together my own list of prompts.
Okay. The way I approach it is that I have to put myself in the mindset that I'm speaking to an algorithm. And, I've done a little bit of coding. And if you think of these engines, they are not created by creative people. They're created by coders. So you have to try and think like a coder. So there's a limit to the amount of stuff that you can ask it to do in one prompt. So, it's all about testing a prompt and then iterating it to try and get what you want. And one of the biggest things I've noticed is if you're working on like long form content, you can't chuck everything in and say, rewrite this as a blog and these are the headings for the blog. You actually have to break the content up manually and then rewrite section by section, because otherwise the generation is just going to generate basically the same sentence over and over and over again, all the way down in different forms, and it becomes very one-dimensional. So break pieces up into separate components and prompt and iterate and prompt. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not gonna spit out the best thing on the first go. The flip side to that is the more you iterate, the more you hit that refresh button, the more synonyms it uses. So I can't even think of an example, but you start off with simple language, and by the fourth reiteration, you are like at varsity thesis level. So you have to be careful with that kind of thing. I mean, you have to specify simplicity, but
It'll be
that would be
interesting
my
to
big.
see. Sorry, Meg.
Mm-mm.
I saw an article saying that ChatGPT has now got memory, so to remember context and inputs that you've used in the past, that you're not having to always repeat those. So I think they opened it to a couple of free users, and it's so I haven't experimented or seen it yet, but it'll be interesting to see if that affects the way that it responds in a way that you want it to, so that it can actually remember what's gone before.
It will. I mean, there is already a contextual memory. I think it can remember up to 5,000 characters or something, or 5,000 words. It's quite substantial already. But the longer you go down in the chat, the less it's going to remember what you said right at the top. So it would be interesting. I'd heard that, but I haven't actually looked into it. So it'll be interesting. Also, if you're writing across different or creating content across different clients, you don't want it to remember client A when you're working on client B. So as long as there's no kind of that cross-pollination between the chats, then that's cool. But
It'd be great. I don't know if it is possible, if you could almost, and maybe on a paid version or something, where you could create different environments or brand profiles, and then you don't have to describe the tone every time, just tweaks for that specific piece, and almost have like a brand guide per client, or it probably exists somewhere out there.
That's living the dream. I think that it's there's a tool that I'm actually using at the moment called AI PRM. And it's a tool in its own right, but it's got a plug-in to ChatGPT. And on the free plug-in version, you can select the language, so you can change from US to UK English, which is a big time saver. And then it's got a little drop down for tone and style as well.
Okay.
But those are very limited. But if you've got the paid version, then you can obviously kind of set up kind of brand style guides. But I think that that particular technology is in its infancy, because even when you're prompting, write this with a friendly tone, and the output spits out something that sounds like a stoned surfer, it doesn't quite understand like friendly versus friendly. And when I was writing my little ebook, I was feeling lazy one day, which we're going to speak about productivity versus laziness in a moment. I was feeling lazy, and so I was like, this is what I want to say. These are my thoughts. Write it in the style, and I copy and pasted about 2 pages that I'd already written myself, and it spat out like I was a stone surfer in that particular section. And I'm like, I can't use this. It sounds nothing like me. So you have to be so careful about, and again, that's why you need that human intervention, I think, at the end of the cycle. So, sorry, Michelle.
Oh no, I was just going to say, Midjourney has something similar in that you can revisit some of the images that you've generated, and you can use those as a reference, or pick up from where you left off. So let's say like you threw in the towel at like 9 o'clock at night because you're just like, it's just not getting there. But there was one gem in that 40 or whatever images that you rendered. And then you can sort of revisit that one and, iterate from there as well, or pull the prompting that you used there and tweak the prompting. So it's not perfect, but yeah, from that side, it is quite handy to be able to revisit what you've generated in the past. Because if you look at those threads as well, I mean, you could never find your stuff. If you had to go back like the day, there's thousands of images.
Yeah, I found I could never find my images in the first place. And maybe that's because I don't use Discord and I'm not used to it. But you prompt and then your stuff disappears and you're scrolling forever and you can't find it again. So yeah, that's why I told you about the private chats. That was
Yes.
my preferred interaction with Discord. But yes, so let's go to the line between productivity and laziness, because now we've kind of agreed there was a general consensus that AI can make you more productive. In my case, I'm shoving more work into the same amount of time because, I want to earn more money. So I'm taking on more work and I can push it out a lot quicker. But on the flip side, come Friday afternoon, I'm not in the mood to really be behind my desk anymore. And there's a very, the slippery slope to, let me just actually let ChatGPT handle this, is it's a real thing. I mean, it's a big issue. So where is the line between productivity and maybe the I don't know, if maybe the better question is, where would your clients be comfortable, between you just using AI to generate content and you putting the effort in? Like, have you slipped into that laziness trap because of AI?
So I'd say, I mean, it's all about the outcome. So I mean, I'm not good enough at prompting to create an acceptable client-ready version out of ChatGPT, But if you're really great at prompting, that's a skill in itself. And if that outcome is better than what you could have produced on your own, go for it. And I mean, I think Google has a similar view of things. So, in their content guidelines, what they say about AI is it rewards Google rewards high quality content regardless of how it's produced. And I think the same applies to your client work. If what you have produced is the best possible outcome and version that you could produce, no matter if it was 80% AI, 20% you, or 1% AI and 99% you, that's what you need to be looking for. And you might get lucky. You might have some pieces where, what AI generates is 50% usable and great. And in that case, take the win and move on. And then you might have cases where you're going to have to work on it a lot longer. So I think as long as you focus on what is the goal of this piece, what is the outcome, is this the highest quality that I can produce using my brainstorming buddy and myself, I think that's where you measure it.
And you, Michelle?
Yeah, I agree. I think because I'm still learning the world of prompting and, figuring my way through it, I think at this point in time, it actually causes me a little bit more work because I will work really hard to get the right image. I feel like I'm already trying to produce an image. Let me just keep going until I get it perfect. Whereas before it was a matter of like you'd produce your key visual with the assets you had available, which in the most part were stock. You'd present that to client and then you'd be like, cool, this is what we want to shoot. These are some references. You would never have like a very close to finished product at that stage. And from there, you'd have to go and start crafting. Now, the crafting is happening almost upfront. So you're generating an image, but you're prompting and you're doing iterations and you're getting it better and better and better. And then you're taking that image and you're still doing more to it. So, for example, you generate an image of a guy in like some really cool clothing, but the colors are wrong for the brand. So you'll end up recoloring it anyway because you just cannot get the prompting that specific to recolor the color of his hoodie or whatever.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, I can't say it's making my life easier and giving me any shortcuts, but it is upping my quality and that I can get to the result that I'm looking for in a more realistic way. I don't have to go into shoots and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, from a graphic perspective, you've just hit the nail on the head in terms of timelines and productivity and and costs, because you don't need to like set up an entire shoot to like get a picture of mushroom fettuccine. You can just generate it in DALL-E now or ChatGPT, Midjourney. I mean, it's that is driving the price down a lot from a client perspective. And I don't know what your guys' feeling is. I think that this kind of price decrease is going to be short-lived because, I mean, when the calculator came out, then suddenly everyone could do their own accounting, but we still pay accountants a shitload of money. So, it becomes more specialized as you go. So, yeah, I think that the driving prices down thing is going to be, when I say short-lived, I don't mean like it's going to be over tomorrow. It's going to be like an adoption curve. So,
Hey fellow freelancers, Shea here. You expected more from freelancing, right? I know, because I've been there. Overworked, overwhelmed, and just over it. But guess what? There is a way out. I managed to increase my income by 55% while working 20% less. And I'm going to show you exactly how I did it in my new Work Less, Earn More course. I guarantee in just 4 weeks, you'll be able to start working at least 1 hour less while earning more. Walk the dog at 11 a.m., plan a getaway, make yourself an extravagant lunch. Why bloody not? So it's time to reclaim your time, boost your income, and achieve the freedom that you crave. Be sure to ask Megan how to get an extra 10% off just for being here.
Yeah. Agree.
Can I ask Michelle a quick question? So you've spoken a couple of times about stock imagery. Is that going the way of the dodo now, or where does that leave Shutterstock and all those companies?
So they've all started developing their own AI engines as well, so that you can generate AI content there or edit using AI tools.
Okay.
I do strongly feel that there's always going to be some need for human involvement. So I don't think we're going to see stock imagery disappear. I think it's still going to be that same level of crafting that's needed. So you could have someone who's just stepped out of college and they use AI and they generate stuff, and the end design is okay, because they don't have the experience to create something polished. And you could have someone who's experienced and they've gone and purchased something off of a stock site and they've modified it and they've done stuff to it, and it's a beautiful polished end piece. So I don't see it disappearing, but it is trying to adapt with the times, especially with the programs themselves, like Photoshop and Illustrator having AI tools within them now as well.
Okay, awesome.
Interesting. Now, you've mentioned, Michelle, and this is not something that we initially kind of had on the radar to discuss, but we had, well, kind of, maybe we did. Is AI an opportunity or a threat? And I think that there's a lot of opportunity. I think that when you start working with AI, you very quickly realize its limitations. So you don't see it as much of a threat as like the average human. Like, it's not sentient. It's not going to take over the world. It's just essentially speeding up process time and enhancing productivity and streamlining processes and all that kind of thing. But now you mentioned, someone straight out of college, doing something an old school way. Like, how quickly do you think the adoption process is going to be that, like, if you don't adopt, you're going to die? Like, should they already be teaching AI tools in college? Like, should we all already be using AI? I mean, you've got the purists, and you see it in the music industry. You know, you've got your Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters, and like if you're not playing the instruments, it's not music, etc. But then you've got someone like Mike Shinoda who can basically create any sound, and he is just as famous for creating music using a computer. So, you know, there's kind of two schools of thought, and there's still a space for both, I think. But I don't know what you guys think about, like, are content creators who are not using AI yet, have they already been left behind? Is this going to be like you have to adopt or you're going to die?
I think it would be remiss not to adopt it. I think, like any other tool in the software, you know, the software that I use on a day-to-day basis is updated so regularly, and they're always adding new tools in. And it's the same kind of thing, you know. Now we've got this toolbox with this strange new tool. If we don't know how to use it, we can carry on doing our jobs, but that tool could maybe make things a little bit easier. For example, generative fill in Photoshop. I'm working with an image. I have these dimensions. I need to make it wider. I don't have any more image to make it wider, but I can use generative fill in Photoshop and create a pretty decent background. You know, I think for the next gen who are busy studying and stuff at the moment, if they're not learning those skills, it's not going to really help them that much. They'll still have the core foundational stuff, and that's super important. But they're also going to be doing it with one hand tied behind their back compared to the guys that are fluent in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same comparison as, you know, are you going to do your assignment using an encyclopedia from the library, or are you going to use Google? You know, eventually, if you're not using Google, it's going to take, you're not going to get that assignment in on time, you know?
Yeah.
So some may adopt slower than others, but I think ultimately we're all going to have to incorporate these tools in our daily lives, not just in our work, but I mean, we already are. You know, and more so than we realize. You know, Netflix is telling us what to watch, Spotify is telling us what to listen to. It's been going on forever. It just, I think the generative side became a bit of a game changer and eye opener.
Yeah. I think that the opportunity and threat are essentially the same thing. I think the threat lies in not adopting AI into your processes, even if it's in like the smallest way possible, especially when it comes to generative AI, because okay, like fair enough, I don't believe that AI can generate any new content ideas. It's not capable of original thought. So you still need your own brain to kind of connect dots and come up with original ideas. But in order to execute, it's a tool to execute. So if you're not using it to execute in some way, I think that you're missing an opportunity. And by doing that, it's threatening your function.
And use it to free up the mundane things so that your brain actually has space to use its uniquely human things like emotional intelligence and imagination and creativity. So get it to summarize the piece of text or create the bullet list or whatever it is that's going to free you up to actually do some critical thinking, which it can't do.
Yeah. Now, flipping back to something Michelle said earlier about, you know, you upload a reference image to kind of help the prompt. That kind of leans into the whole copywriting, responsible AI, ethical use thing. And I mean, this is a multifaceted, and I don't want to obviously bog down the conversation getting too technical about it. But at the end of the day, generative AI is a tool, whatever you're using. So you are still responsible as a user. I mean, we're not speaking now about training data sets and, you know, OpenAI scraped the internet and kind of copyright infringed on like all people's novels and all that kind of thing. But you as the user, where does the ethical line lie? Because you know, when you're uploading an image or you're kind of providing a reference text in ChatGPT, you don't necessarily own that image yourself. So like there's a bit of a gray area in terms of the copyright. I mean, you're not using that to earn money, or you're not using it as the final product. But how do you guys kind of balance those kind of ethical and responsible issues?
Do you want to
I
go
think
first?
firstly, making sure that whatever you're putting in there it's not something you would hide from the public domain in the first place, not something that's super proprietary or, under lock and key or top secret. So, I mean, that's step number one. And then ensuring originality on top of that. So, I mean, I know in the States, there's quite a gray area between this was very close to something that's already been published and people can actually sue. I mean, they love to sue. So, I mean, they'll find any reason to sue. But if it's close enough, you could be in trouble. So, to make sure that you, I think, avoid that direct copy paste is also important. And it's going to be quite interesting with the new copyright. Well, hopefully it isn't signed into law. That's meant to be signed on the 29th of February or something in South Africa, where basically the government's saying that any content can be used for educational purposes or, I think it was educational purposes. I could be wrong. So, and then you have no rights as the author of that information. So it'd be interesting to know how AI would play into that too, with what it spits out and what you could use. There's a lot of petitions against that at the moment. Please sign one if you haven't already.
I've got a very, very good IP lawyer, so I can send you his name.
Okay. Yeah, it's scary stuff. And without me pretending to be a lawyer or anything, that's all I have to say on the matter.
Awesome. And you, Michelle, how are you skirting the issue is not the right terminology, but how are you working within the parameters of this whole copyright issue?
So I think at this point in time, the way that I'm using AI is to generate images to lead me to a treatment. So I'm still very much against using AI generated images in advertising without there being some kind of reference that it is AI generated. It kind of goes back to, if you look at magazine images and you see just how photoshopped the person is compared to how they actually look, it's that kind of area of make believe and mislead that I don't feel that comfortable with. So, from my perspective, I try to use the AI tools as a stepping stone in the creation of final work. So I will storyboard using AI tools, but then I will go and shoot stuff with professional photographers, with talent, etc. So we are creating something original at the end of the day. We're not just recycling stuff. I have a massive, massive issue when it comes to the referencing of artists' work. You've got someone who spent like the last 30 years perfecting their craft and getting their brushstroke to be unique, and then AI just sort of goes in there and pulls it out as a term, and suddenly you've got like 3,000 images generated to look like a Todd Lockwood painting, for example. And I do feel like if there is some kind of referencing system or something that they can use to inform the public that this is a generated AI image and to be able to protect copyrights of the authors, I think that's super important. Because those people have worked really hard to get to where they are, right? They've perfected their craft, and something can generate something similar in, a few seconds. It's the same as sort of academic research, right? You wouldn't be able to just use someone else's research and put it forward as your own. And I'm kind of like, there needs to be some sort of referencing or some kind of system in place to just protect the author at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And what do you guys think about journalism? So, news agencies that are getting bots to write articles, and do you think that should be disclosed?
Yes, because I think that as we adopt generative AI more and more, I think that it's going to be easier and easier to spot generated content. I mean, if you work with a lot of generative tools like ChatGPT, I mean, you said yourself, like you can see the prompt or the chat GPT generated social media posts, you can pick it up a lot easier, especially like even long form, like, it's been prompted, write me 1,000-word piece on XYZ, and essentially it just kind of, like I said earlier, it repeats the same question and it never gets to the point, and then right in the last paragraph it's like, so XYZ. So I think that news agencies that are using generative AI without human intervention are going to lose credibility if they don't, if they just like pushing content out and not disclosing. I don't know about whether they will disclose, because I certainly won't click onto an article if it says this article was generated by generative AI, because then I can just go into ChatGPT and generate the article myself. So yeah, but I think that if it's not disclosed, the kind of news agencies and they're going to lose credibility, and the news industry is already in turmoil. So
it raises some very interesting questions as well. I mean, I think I shared the AI that article on that peacekeeping AI tool that they were planning, and it was basically just like nuke everyone. That's
yes,
how
we want world peace.
And I'm like, it all depends on what's been fed into it, right? So it's the same thing with journalism. Like, I know that Google is having an issue at the moment because their AI is too inclusive and too politically correct, and trying to bring in a more even playing field, which is a really great goal. But if you're generating an image of a specific person in history and that's totally not the person, so
I think that
what's paid to it, yeah.
the example I think they used was to generate an image of the US founding fathers, and it put like people of color and women in there because it needed to be an inclusive. I think they've shut it down. I read something just before we came on the call
Temporarily off.
that they put it offline because it was like generating these weird things. I don't know, like, how do you guys feel? Do you feel icky using generative AI? Because as the prompter, you are seen as the author of that image or that piece. So even though it was generated by AI, and you can quite easily, slap it out there, and you are still considered as the author. I mean, obviously, you guys, should people feel gross about doing that? Because under the law, technically, they are seen as the author, even though they've used the prompt tool to generate it. Where are people drawing the line?
I think, again, as I was saying before, it's about the outcome. So I would feel icky if I was just doing a copy paste, or I think I mentioned it to you, Meg, about someone who interviewed me for a magazine article, and I wrote up my nice little answers, thought, oh, this is going to be such a great article. And when I saw it in the magazine, I was like, OMG, this is 100% written top to tail by ChatGPT. They threw my interview answers in there, and I didn't even tell one person about it or share it with anyone because it was icky. And that was, to me, was really icky. I was like, I spent all this time crafting my answers, and now ChatGPT's just turned them into sort of a mindless mush. So that for me was a definite ick factor. But yeah, I think if you can stand proudly behind what you put out, whether some of it's generated by AI or not, that's where I would draw the line.
Yeah. And you, Mish?
Yeah. For me, I really don't like using AI in the final result. I like to, have that intuitive interaction with the design and craft it and work with it and fight with it sometimes. And I feel like skipping some of those steps sort of cheapens it somehow. There was an example I read of someone who took a Keith Haring painting that was deliberately left unfinished, and they generated what the rest of the image should look like. And the whole reason it was left unfinished was just not considered at all. And by taking that and generating the rest of it and presenting it like, look, I finished it for you, it was just like, it was slammed by people because they were like, how could you do that? That's actually so insensitive.
Mm.
And I mean, if I think of the number of people I interact with, for example, on a shoot, who might not get a chance to be involved in the creative process if I just generate an AI image. It's I think it should be a tool to get to the end, but not the end in itself.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a tool. I mean, it's again, it's how you leverage it. So again, with my calculator metaphor, analogy, whatever you want to call it, are you using that calculator to commit fraud, or are you using it to help someone just, work out their salary? It's a tool, and it can be used in multiple ways. And there are, unfortunately, always people that are going to use it in inappropriate ways. But that's my take. I think that you should be guided by your own moral compass in terms of the ickiness factor. If you're comfortable, then good for you. But try and at least have that human touch.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, and that's why we still exist as creatives. So the fact that it is just a tool is why we are still sitting working on our client work today. It's not able to bring that nuance, that context, that emotion, that human element, and that's awesome because that's what we do. So as long as it stays in the tool category, we've still got our jobs.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I think that's probably my takeaway from this conversation and all the conversations. I mean, AI is just such a trending topic. You can't. I went to a client meeting. It was a brand new client. Never met them before. We spoke about 5 minutes about their product, and then the rest of the hour was spent about talking about AI and generative tools. So it's regardless. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. I think that if you're not using it, you are being left behind. You need to start as soon as possible, adopt these things into, I mean, you don't have to dedicate your life to it. I mean, smart, what is it? Internet of Things. My coffee machine's not connected to the internet. I don't need to control my curtains from my cell phone, but there's still that human intervention, and it's the same with AI. I think that you need to try and integrate it. It'll speed up your process, but you need to learn how to use it, and you need to start doing it soon, because the quicker it evolves, the further you're going to get left behind. But yeah, my takeaway is that there's always going to be the need for human intervention, regardless of how good the tool is. I don't know if you have a different thought, Michelle.
No, I'm firmly in camp human. Mainly because I worked for too long to try and get better at my skills and stuff. I think, like any tool, it's got its place. But without that human touch, stuff starts becoming hollow, and it's even the process of creating it starts becoming hollow and meaningless. And I'm all for robots taking over like our menial chores, but they must leave some of the beauty and the creative to us.
Well, this could launch into a whole nother conversation about whether content itself, content marketing, and the content we're actually producing does have a deeper meaning and not hollow because we're posting it all over social media and the internet. But that's a conversation for another day. So I don't know. Closing remarks. I've enjoyed this. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Michelle, for taking the time. Thanks, Shea, for joining us after hours. I know you're very protective of your after hours. We didn't book this in Calendly with you, so thank you for. I know.
Just as well I showed up. Hey, touch and go there.
So closing remarks. I mean, do you guys have any kind of last thoughts before we end it?
I don't, because I think Michelle summed it up really beautifully. So what she said.
Okay, awesome. So do you want to repeat that, Michelle? Do you remember what you said? Something about Camp Human.
Human, yeah, program human. I'm enjoying the journey with AI. I really believe you need to keep that core of humanity in your work. You need to be actively involved in your own work. Otherwise, why do it?
Mm.
And it's an interesting journey because I get so much amusement out of seeing what other people are generating and what's getting fed to them. I mean, it's just sometimes so ridiculous. And I don't know, it's really like stupid humor, but I look at it and I enjoy it. I
Yeah.
enjoy seeing these people with an extra arm coming out like the side, because AI decided they needed 3 arms. But yeah, I know. I think generally speaking, it's if you can keep that human soul in your work, that's what matters, and I think that's what clients want as well, because they want to connect on a human level. They don't want stuff just sort of churned out for them, because it is going to all start feeling the same. And
Yeah.
I think that's where the human touch makes a difference.
Yeah.
And those are the
I
kind
think
of clients you want to have,
Mm.
not the ones you're happy for just churned out, regurgitated, generic bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where our challenge as creators lies, is because an AI can push something out. You put a prompt in and it literally takes like 3 seconds to put an output. The challenge that we face as creators is infusing that human element. And if you're working for a brand or a company that's got a very specific brand persona, ensuring that that brand voice is coming through in the content. Because otherwise it's just going to kind of disappear into the ether as another piece of generic content that no one takes notice of. So I think that brand voice and brand personality is kind of where our skill sets as creators is going to become ever more important, until AI can correctly understand style guides. Cool. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you, guys. And again, if you enjoyed this, please do share, and click subscribe, whether you're listening on your favorite podcast channel or on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe, share it with your mates, share it with other freelancers, share it with other creatives, even AI nerds, who can gain some interest or points that hopefully we haven't spoken the biggest load of crap for
Even
the
the
last hour.
coders.
Even the coders. And yeah, thanks again, Shea and Michelle. And until next time, keep it real. Keep it real, yo.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Cheers. Thanks so
Bye.
much. Bye.